This time on Mess Monsters, dream dyeing with tissue paper. Hi, it's Laurie in the art studio at Madison Children's Museum. This week on Mess Monsters, I'm going to show you how to do these beautiful, dreamy art pieces using a very special and unusual art material. We're going to be creating this art today with a special kind of tissue paper called bleeding art tissue. It's very important for this project that is this type of tissue paper that you use. It is made with very colorful dye that will come off of the tissue paper when you get it wet. You may have encountered some tissue paper in a package that you were unwrapping that you touched with a wet hand where you got color on your hand. That's this kind of tissue paper. Now you can buy this at many local art supply and craft stores, or you can get it online. It's actually made in Appleton, Wisconsin by the Paycon company. The other materials that we're going to be using are some heavy watercolor paper. You can try using other thick kinds of paper, but this absorbent watercolor paper will give you the best result. Our magic solution for helping our dye come out of the tissue paper and going onto the watercolor is going to be this vinegar water. So you can use any kind of a spray bottle filled with half vinegar and half water. Now, to press our paper and make our final print, we're going to be using our iron. This is a regular home iron and an ironing board, and we've protected our iron and ironing board with some paper. I used an old grocery bag, but you could also use newspaper. And this is a step that an adult will need to help with. Are you ready to get started? All right. So first of all, I've prepared my work area with a piece of cardboard to protect my table surface. And I've got a couple pieces of watercolor paper here. You could use any size, you could cut it into shapes. I'm just doing a couple sample pieces to try some different effects. And then we need to prepare our tissue paper. You can see how many beautiful colors that it comes in. Now you can either cut your tissue paper into squares, or you can tear it with your hands for a special effect. Younger children really enjoy cutting and tearing paper, and it's a great skill to practice. So to prepare our paper, we can cut it into small pieces, or we can, as I showed you before, tear it. It's easier to tear it that long way than it is the short way, you'll see. So I'm going to make some long strips here to go with my big squares. All right, now to get started applying our bleeding tissue to our paper, we're going to first spray it with our vinegar water. Young children love spraying, and you want to get it saturated but not soaking wet. So I'm spraying it until it seems to absorb all that water that I put on it. Now you can start placing pieces of tissue paper down onto the wet watercolor paper, and it'll stick in place. And it's a little bit difficult with this project to make designs that really look like a plan. You're going to really get an abstract piece when you finish. But if you want to experiment and try to make your piece have a design in it with shapes cut, you can do that. I'm just laying on colors that I like. And you can do a few layers. You can see how these colors are starting to blend with each other as I apply them. And if you have an area that your paper is not sticking, you can just squirt it with a little more water. And see that dye start to leach out of your watercolor paper, out of your tissue paper onto your watercolor paper. On this piece here, I'm going to choose all blues and reds. You can do any combination of colors that you want. And this is one of those projects that no matter what you add to it, you're going to get something pretty interesting looking when you're finished. So I've covered my paper with almost a full layer here. And we're gonna aim to not have any white spots left that you can see. So wherever you see a white spot, stick a piece of tissue paper over it so we'll get nice coverage. And remember, those colors are gonna blend. Okay, I just see a couple little white spaces. I'm gonna give it, sometimes when you spray your spray bottle, it might spray your tissue right off the paper. Okay, so when they're all stuck down, I do one more. Remember, the water kind of acts like glue. So if you've got a spot where it's not sticking, give it another squirt. All right, one more soaking of my paper with the vinegar water. I'm gonna let that one sit there for a minute while I work on another one. And this one, I'm going to do all reds and yellows. I'm gonna do something a little different, and maybe some brown. Sometimes separating all these little sheets of tissue paper is an adventure in itself, and I don't have very good fingernails. This is a wonderful art project for young children's fine motor skills, for picking up and placing small pieces, for color identification. You could do shapes, you could do different shapes to find. And then when you get done with your project, you'll have this beautiful, beautiful piece of art. So this is my fall theme here with all my browns and my reds and my, oh, here's a beautiful pink. I think that's gonna look nice with my oranges and yellows. Let's experiment a little bit. Remember I told you about how sometimes like shapes don't really show up too well, but let's just give it a try. I'm gonna cut a rounded shape here out of red and place it over my yellow, and we'll see if that turns out visible. Here, I'll put those scraps over here. You can really experiment with this process and see what you can make. Give it another squirt, make sure everything sticks. And then I will show you the magical next step that is gonna soak all the dye out of the tissue paper and onto the watercolor paper to make our work of art. Maybe a couple more scraps here. I wanna cover all those white spots. There, see how it's so transparent, it's showing through? Okay, and I will put my final piece of yellow on there, give it one last squirt, and then let it sit while I iron my first work of art here. I'm gonna bring this over and set it on my prepared ironing board. Remember, you wanna cover your ironing board with some paper. And I'm gonna put just a sheet of scrap paper on top to absorb some of the water. I'm gonna cover it with the other piece of paper. And now I'm going to run my iron over it. I've set it to the number 6 number, which is like a steam setting, but I have not put any water in my iron for the steam because that is not necessary. So you're gonna start to see some wet spots sort of show up on your paper bag here. And now look at this, how the dye started to go onto that scrap piece of paper. You get kind of a bonus work of art there. Look at that. And now my pieces of tissue paper, look, see how the dye just came right out of them? And look where it went onto our watercolor paper. And it even made this cool abstract little heart there, which was something of a happy accident. I love when things like that happen with my artwork. So let's take a look at our other piece and see how our fall themed piece of art turned out, and see if we can see that circle. Now our tissue paper that we don't need anymore, it's such beautiful colors now. It's sort of faded, and when you let that dry, you can use that for making collages or other pieces of art. So again, I've got my paper bag. I'm gonna put just a scrap piece of art office paper. It could be any kind of scrap paper. Cover it with the other side of my paper bag, and then I'm gonna just iron it until I see some little wet spots on the top. Remember, the ironing part is the adult job, because we're using something pretty hot, and even when our watercolor paper comes out from under the iron, the paper itself is going to be a little hot. So little hands should stay away from this. Oh, look at our bonus piece. Look how beautiful. It looks like a gorgeous, like Helen Frankenthaler abstract piece of art. And we can peel our tissue paper off. Oh, look, the circle that I made, it kind of showed up, and it kind of showed up on my artwork. Actually, this is really beautiful. Look at that. These turn out so gorgeous, kind of no matter what you do, as long as you cover all your paper, or most of it, with your tissue paper, you'll get this beautiful print. I could do this all day. I hope you all have a lot of fun doing this project. It would be a great one to do as a family, and you can end up with these pieces of art that you could frame, maybe even give as gifts or make greeting cards. And all you need are some simple materials. And this big pack of bleeding tissue paper, this is gonna last you for a lot of projects. And you can also use the bleeding tissue paper to do the same kind of an effect on fabric and on paper mache. So I think you'll have a lot of other fun ideas that you can use your bleeding tissue paper for. It costs about $7 for a big giant pack of it, which has over 100 sheets of tissue paper. So a big bargain as far as art supplies go. Vinegar, you can get that from the grocery store. I hope you'll have fun with this project. I will see you all later. Show me what you made if you want to shoot a picture of it and put it here in the comments. I'd love to see it. Bye, everybody.